Hello everybody. So in this video I'm going to talk about HTML5, the local storage. This is a new feature present in most of the HTML5 browsers. So you can see here the supported browsers and the version. So it has been supported in Chrome since 4.0, Internet Explorer since 8.0, and so on. So why this feature is important? This feature is cool because it allows us to store at least 5 megabytes in the user browser, and the information is never transferred to the server. Before this feature, we used to use cookies to store information, but cookies are very limited. They allow us to store just like 4 KB. So with the local storage, that's over 1000 times more information that we can store compared to cookies. Even with cookies, we could do some cool features, but with this local storage, now the possibilities are like infinite. Like you can do a lot of stuff with local storage. I think this feature is underrated, and probably we need to think a lot more about the possibilities this local storage opens to us. And I have been playing with some use case for this, and I think it's really important, this new feature. And there are some stuff that was impossible before, but now it's possible, and it does not require powerful servers to allow us to do this kind of stuff. So say that I'm just going to show some sample here. This is a really simple site. I have just installed Easy Publish. This is just a test installation, but it's good for this example I'm going to show here. So we have this, a very simple site with 2 categories. It could have more, but for now there's just 2 categories here. So when the user browses to category 1, it displays those 2 articles here. What we can do is that we can think that when the user visited category 1, that means the user is interested in items in the category 1, but he might not visit all the articles now. So what we can do is to parse the information, those items information in this list here. So what we can do is to check the information for article 1 and put it in a buffer. Check the information from article 2 and put it in a buffer. And when I mean buffer, I mean in the local storage. So we can put it in a variable and store the content in JSON format, and then later we can use this information. So I'm going to show here when this user here, I have just cleared everything and it's empty, so it's a new sample. When the user visited this, I put those 2 items in one array here. So you can see I have the object 1 and the object 2. So the content in this JSON is the byline, which is this content here. The ID, which I'm going to show how I use this ID later, but I can get the ID. It's one invisible information, but the ID is basically here. So it's not visible, but I can get in the HTML attribute here, data content ID. And then I have the link with, I get the 8 half value here It's the link for the article 1, and the article 2 has also one link. And the summary, which is this part here, and the title. The title we have here and here. So basically, when the user visits category 1, he gets this list here, and we put it in a buffer. Then when the user visits the article 1, what we can do is to just wait a minute. What we can do is to, I'm going to explain how that recommended feature works, but for now I'm going just to explain what's going on here. So the user visited category 1, we put those items in the buffer, and when the user visits article 1, I show the article 2 here, because I know the user visited the category 1 and he might be interested in other articles of the category 1. So I put the remaining articles here, and in this case there is just article 2, and this I'm getting from this list here. And when the user is in this page, I check what is this page ID, content ID, and when I'm outputting the content here, I just compare, and if it's not if the object is not the same as this article here, then I output. So it's going just to show the article 2 for now, because article 1 is this article here. So I compare the IDs. So I'm not displaying the article 1 here as a suggestion for other articles. But then let's say the user goes to category 2. So I know the user visited category 1, and I'm still going to display the items in category 1 because I know the user might be still interested in some items in the category 1, but I know he visited category 2 now, and if he does not find any interesting content here, he can still find some interesting content in the category 1 he visit right directly on this page here. So now I have those 4 items in the buffer. I have added this article 3 here and the article 4 in this buffer. Remember, I'm using the HTML storage engine. And then when I go to article 2, it's going to display more items here because I know the user visited category 1 and category 2. So I'm going to display also some items in the category 2 because he might, after reading this article, he might see something already interesting here. There might be more categories like category 3, 4, 5, and a lot of more categories. I know it's possible to just in the server to display some items here in the category 1, but this feature here allow more contextual recommendation because now we are getting items from category 2 as well, and we might add more categories here, and then we can think about more smart way to display the items here, so we can limit just for 3 items per category, and then we can do a lot more with this in mind. Another thing that I'm doing here is that when the user visits one article, I'm saying article, not the category page, so it's the content itself, like real content, not just a list of content. So when the user visits this article 2 page here, I'm sending the server a message saying, hey, I have visited those two articles here. Article, actually it's here, the message I'm sending to the server. I'm sending my user ID, which generated automatically, so it's just a random ID, and a message saying the list of content that I have visited. And then the server is just going to send us back one information about other users, about what other users visited. So we have an user that visited the content 68, 64, 65. So now we get that message, and we can use that message in the user browser itself to check what might be one interesting article for this user. So what we do is to check other users, what other users visited, and for example, if this page here is 64, this page here is 64, so we have another user that have visited 64. Then we have another, if this user also visited 65 here, and this other user also visits 65, so this other user might be similar to this user, and that means that we can recommend article 68 to this user because they have visited almost the same page, so they are similar, and what one user visited might be what the other user will visit. So we can recommend this article. We could do that in server side, but when we have several users, it's way better to do all those calculations client side. We can do all those calculations client side, and the server just keeps sending like some message. In this case, I'm using main cache to store the messages from the user. So I have like one array of users, and I keep updating those array and keeping the most recent messages from the users in the top of that array and limiting to like 150 users, and the most recent will stay and the old ones I'm going to remove, and I'm also going to update the associated value to one user. And then the server do not do any calculation. He just sends a message back to the client, and with that message we can do some calculations and check what is the recommended content for that user. And if we, for example, have another user here with content 70 and 64, and another thing, for example 71, we would still recommend 68 because this user has two content in common with this other user, and it would have just one content in common with this third user we are imagining. So we see what is the more similar user, and then we recommend one article based on that. So I'm going to now create a new session here. So I'm starting a private session, and then I'm going to visit article 2, and then I'm going to get a recommendation. It's 64 in this case. So I'm going to check here, for example, going to check. So I have sent one message to the server saying, oh, I'm a user and I'm visiting article 65. Then the server sent back the current concurrent users visited page, and then we check, oh, this user visited 65, and then we have other users that also visited 65. So we can use any of those users and recommend one article for this user. In this case, we have recommended 68, no, 64. So this user visited 65, this user also visited 65, and this user also visited 65. So we can either recommend 64 or 68 because that does not matter. That's if this user visited 65, then he might also be interested in articles that other users that visited the same page also visited. So this is just another way to use the storage engine. In this case, I'm using a little bit of server information, so I'm communicating with the server, but then I'm also using the storage engine to process the information the servers sent back, and based with the current information we have stored for this user. There are also way more implications to this. We could keep contextual related content based on the user clicks. We could, like, if the user search for one term and then the user, I don't know, goes to the search page, and then we can get the list of that search, and they also put in the buffer. If the user clicks sitemap, I don't know, like I was thinking that we can also store user clicks and do some operation on top of that, but for now that's something I have just implemented the way to store. I'm also storing clicks here, but I'm still thinking one easy way to use that information. But yeah, for now I think that is it. I'm still working, polishing those features here, but I can see that with this new feature, local storage, we can get way more smart contextual suggestion to users, and that might increase the user clicks in the site, and that might also increase the time the user spend on the site, because if he is browsing content and we keep always suggesting content that the user might be interested based in the user interactions in the site, the user might keep checking content that he might like, because if we display like content that are randomly generated, or that the user might not be interested, then the user will just leave the site, and the easier we show the user content that he might be interested, like we are already showing the content here instead of making the user click category 1 to check items in the category 1, so he can still be in category 2 and already access items that he might be interested that are in category 1. So that is it for now. I might keep working on those new features. Please comment, and I hope you enjoy and create some really interesting applications with HTML local storage. So see you. Bye.